Saang YouTube to?
YouTube mo.
YouTube ko? YouTube ko? On my YouTube?
Hindi po.
Oh my God, I'm there.
I-try mo nga i-share sa...
Ba't naman ganun?
Wala nagawa. Hangin pa yan. Naka-ano tayo.
Where am I? It's okay. It has no sound. That's good. Ba't naman ganun?
Wala nagawa. Hangin pa yan.
Okay. Sorry.
I-try mo nga share yung link.
Ayoko na. Pangit ako online.
O, i-share mo sa group.
It's okay. It has no sound. That's good.
Dito sa chat. Dito sa group natin. Open ano mo dito?
Alin?
I-share mo na sa mga pages mo.
No, I haven't opened. Ano ko?
Hindi. Ito. Copy mo muna yan. Ano?
Wait, which one?
Hindi. Yeah, share.
Share? Share what?
Yung link.
Okay. It's really, really very slow. Grabe, it's so slow.
Yung sa link mo na rin sa group natin, yun na lang i-share mo doon sa mga pages mo. Yung sa group natin, sinare. Okay na.
Sound test pa. Parang Hagardo Versosa ako dyan. So do I need to open FB?
No need na.
No need.
Diyan ka na lang sa kanya.
It's okay. It has no sound. That's good. Ang kulit eh. So can I reduce this? Sorry.
Yun yung i-copy mo. Hindi, ako yung yun na lang sa
Ayoko na.
close mo.
Pangit ako online.
Pero hindi mo siya marinig. Ano natin ito?
Parang so very undignified naman yan. Okay, mute ako. So, pasensya na po, I'm not a very technical person. So if anybody is able to hear or see this, well, this is the reality of not being a techie. So, saan po ito lumalabas? Stream where?
YouTube.
Okay, so we're supposed to start at 5
5
anyway.
o'clock.
5 o'clock. That's 5 o'clock Middle East time. Can I make this smaller so that my face will look smaller also? No, I Lapad naman ako.
Pati ko lumabas mo.
Andito ako on YouTube. Scary ang mukha ko. It's so slow. Ay, nako. Things need to be done and things need to be said. Some test. Ang card over so far. So do I need to open it? Really no.
Sabi mo i-share.
So we're supposed to go live, or actually we're live now, but we're going to start with the topic at 5 o'clock. So it's 4:54 p.m. And it would be nice if you can share, kung merong pag-sharean, if you think someone's going to be interested enough, since we're going to be talking about some relevant issues that might be of help to an OFW, or in particularly concerning you, concerning sa ating lahat na mga nagtatrabaho dito overseas. So it's not new information, it's just something that's being clarified, and some information that we are trying to clarify and trying to check and see if we really have the same understanding sa status natin as OFWs with regard to our OWWA and sa mga benefits natin. So that's all. Hindi pang-aaway, hindi something controversial. So that's something that's very clear. Hindi to pang-aaway, hindi controversial. It's not making something out of nothing. It's just getting some clarifications. And pasensya na po sa itsura natin because hindi naman tayo YouTube star. Ano lang tayo, answers and content lang talaga. Pasensya. So it's 4:56.
This is all about OWWA benefit ng OFW.
This is all about OWWA. Ano ang nakukuha natin as an OFW? Ano ang naitutulong ng OWWA to the OFW? And ano ang responsibility ng OFW corresponding to OWWA? Kasi hindi rin pwedeng one way, di ba? So we're trying to be fair. That's the bottom line here. We're trying to be fair to both sides, sa OFW na tayo, and to the people who have been tasked to take care of us, which in this case, OWWA, and the people behind OWWA. Yun lang.
Share mo na sa page mo?
Hindi.
Share mo.
Teka.
So, ano ko sa OFW na page?
Excuse me na. Excuse me.
All about OWWA.
Watch live, all about OWWA. What do we know about OWWA? Yun na lang. And it's 5 o'clock. Okay, it's 5 o'clock, so whether we like it or not, eto na po. And good afternoon to everyone. Good evening po sa mga watching us from ibang bansa who's not on our same timeline. It's 5 o'clock here where we are, and I know that it's around 9 o'clock sa Pilipinas po. So in other places, it's either good afternoon or good morning. The thing here is it's Friday the 13th, it's November 13. So magandang araw, magandang hapon, magandang gabi to everyone else. And this is a raw stream. What do we mean by a raw stream? It's not something that's been practiced. It's not something that's been scripted or pre-recorded. So live po tayo. And as I said earlier, this is going to be all about OWWA. So sa hindi po nakakaalam, ano po ba yung OWWA? Is there someone who, do we even have anyone who's watching us right now? So yung OWWA po is yung Overseas Workers Welfare Administration na supposedly, ideally, tayong mga OFW should be members of. So that's one thing. Ang problema po is nagkaka-issue tayo, diretso agad ang problema. So ang problema po kasi is nagkaka-issue tayo with regards to our OWWA memberships, yung OWWA benefits whenever we get into some issues or into some problems while overseas. And then, syempre, when it happens, ang nangyayari is nag-claim, nagkakainitan, nagkakaroon ng confusion. There are blames and there's a lot of things going on. Kasi bakit hindi nakakakuha ng benefit? Bakit kesyo ganito? Bakit kesyo ganyan? So that is one big issue that we have been facing with regards to OWWA and the ATN. Nasasali ang ATN dito. Pero do we really understand also kung ano ang kinalaman ng ATN at ng OWWA? So these are things that at some point OFWs really need to understand, especially tayong mga nandito sa kung saan man tayo naroon. In our case, we are in the Middle East. So mas sensitive ang area namin, mas kinakailangan natin ng awareness and protection in terms of what our government can do for us in case we get into trouble or in case there are unforeseen circumstances na, syempre, when you say unforeseen circumstances, ito yung mga aksidente, ito yung mga bagay-bagay na hindi natin inaasahan. And with life, nothing is really assured. Okay? So, first and foremost, ano po ba again ang OWWA? So, ito yung overseas workers. Ano ba yun? Oh, hindi nga ako expert ng OWWA eh. Diba, Miss Ethel? Ng Overseas Workers Welfare Administration. Mahaba kasi, palagi nila natin sinasabi OWWA without even really knowing ano ang OWWA, ano ang understanding natin sa OWWA. So, OWWA is under the DFA. DFA is the Department of Foreign Affairs. So, lahat tayong mga nag-o-overseas, lahat tayong OFWs, kumbaga, Overseas Filipino Workers, before tayo umalis ng Pilipinas, if we were deployed from the Philippines, dumadaan tayo ng POEA. Di po ba? That's the Philippine Overseas Employment Agency. So lahat ng mga employers natin should be registered with the POEA. Now, yung POEA naman is connected with DOL. Ito yung Department of Labor and Employment sa Pilipinas. So kung land-based ka at saka or wherever ka based, basta nasa Pilipinas ka nakabase, sa DOL ka, Department of Labor and Employment. Pero once you leave the country, then you fall under POEA, you fall under POLO. That's the Philippine Overseas Labor Office. I don't know if I'm making sense to some or if I'm going too slow or too fast na nag-jump ako ng topics, pero I'm just trying to get through to all these abbreviations at mga ano. So, pag nandito na tayo overseas, instead of DOL or DOLE, as most people would call it, yung Department of Labor and Employment, ang equivalent niyan sa overseas people is yung POLO. So, when we need to have our contracts verified, nagpupunta tayo ng Villa 2 or kung saan man kayo naroon, but we go to OWWA POLO. So, kasi ito yung parang magkakambal sila eh. When you go to POLO, which is the DOLE equivalent, then you essentially have yourself registered as an overseas worker. Di po ba? So magpaparehistro ka, dadalhin mo yung kontrata mo. So once you do that, then napapasok ka na sa rehistro or sa ano ka na ni Big Brother ng gobyerno natin for overseas deployed na worker. So pag ano ka ng POLO, meron kang OWWA registration. Ito yung parang insurance mo. Sa OWWA, pag membro ka ng OWWA, you are covered for 2 years. It says on the manual na at least for 2 years, maximum ang coverage natin sa OWWA. Now, what's been happening is that, ito yung what's been happening is that people don't quite understand when they should do the OWWA membership. Unbelievable as it sounds, madaming tao ang hindi nakaka-understand or actually quite get the grasp of kailan magpapamiyembro sa OWWA. Because ang alam lang nila, pupunta sila ng embassy or pupunta sila ng consulate or kasi most people kasi abroad sasabihin diretso isa lang iisip embassy. They don't really differentiate na embassy is iba, POLO OWWA is another sector. So sabihin lang nila, pupunta ako ng embassy kasi uuwi ako, magpapa-OWWA ako para makakuha ako ng OAC. So in most cases, most people here would equate OWWA with OAC. Yun lang. And then they oftentimes they disregard it na yun lang ang relevance ng OWWA. Para pang OEC, at kailan kukuha ng OEC? Pag nagbabakasyon lang or pag natatapos lang ng kontrata and nagfo-for good. Which is the exact opposite of how and when your OWWA should be done. Kasi it's clearer when you are legally deployed from the Philippines. Kasi kumbaga dumaan ka ng POEA, right, Ms. Ethel?
Yes.
Yes, kasi pag dumaan ka ng Philippines, if you are deployed under the proper process, I mean, I'm not saying that there's a wrong process para dun sa mga direct hires, but when we're saying you were deployed from the standard process, which means from the Philippines to wherever you are right now overseas, then dumaan ka ng POEA, nakapag-PDOS ka, nakapag-rehistro ka through all the agencies before you flew out. So, walang sabit yon, automatic, under ka na agad sa radar ng protection nila. I mean, it's not a negative radar or anything, but under ka na sa protection nila kasi andun ka na. But then what happens is that there are millions, I would say, okay, hundreds and thousands probably, of Filipinos who did not go through this standard deployment. And ito yung mga nasa gray areas. And sometimes these are the people who fall through the cracks. Bakit? Or who? Okay, let's start with who. Yung mga who went out on visit visa or who went out on tourist visas. I mean, sometimes sabihin lang, magkapareho lang naman si visit at saka si tourist. There's a slight difference between that. But anyway, these are two kinds of visas that most people would use to leave the country. And then there are those who actually grew up outside of the country. And then there are those who have found employment. They initially came as dependents and accompanying families. And then eventually they started working overseas. So migrant workers pa rin po tayo, and we should still be covered under OWWA. Kasi bakit po, we still have the intent to go home eventually eh. Hindi po tayo permanenteng residente kung saan man tayong bansa pupunta. And in such case, we need to let our government know na we are here or we are there somewhere so that they will know and they will be able to extend the protection of our government in case there is an eventuality or in case there is a situation that we need the help. Kasi yun ang purpose ng having all these agencies tracking us abroad eh. It's not just to know or to find out kung saan at nasaan ang contributions natin, but actually is their way of knowing na nandito tayo, this is how many or how many millions are here and there, and then they would be able to allocate na and identify na ito yung mga nangailangan just in case, ito yung kailangan ng allocatan, at ito yung kailangan tingnan and to monitor. So yun ang purpose nun. So going back, those people na who went out directly, so hindi tayo nakapag-PDOS, hindi tayo dumaan ng POEA registration. Ito yung may mga tendencies who would fall into the crack as I was saying earlier. Kasi you are abroad, you're thinking na as long as you have the visa or as long as you're working and earning, it's fine. Naririnig mo yung OEC, kailangan ko lang yun. Sabihin mo, kailangan ko lang yun once uuwi ako for vacation. So that's easy to get. I'll just pay $25 or the equivalent and then I get the document. I go home for vacation, I get tax-free, I show it to the Bureau of Immigration, and then I come back, hindi ako nahihirapan sa airport. Yan lang palaging iniisip ng kadalasan, but that's not it. Okay? So, medyo, misled tayo by assumptions natin na yun lang. today we went out. Miss Ethel and Inday Cheryl, the three of us went out. And we just tried out of the blue. Nagtanong kami sa mga nakasalubong namin na crew sa pinagkainan. Are you a member of OWWA? Ang sagot, no ma'am. Bago ka ba? No ma'am. Ilang taon ka na dito? Ma'am, I've been here for like how many years? Since 2017. So, since 2017, hindi pa nakakauwi yung taong yon. So, since 2017, that person, since hindi siya umuwi, has never felt the need to go and register for OWWA. And that is so scary. Alam mo kang bakit? Because if something had happened to that person in between, then the government doesn't even know that he or she is an OFW. Kasi pagkakaalam nila, this person left the Philippines on a visit visa, this person left the Philippines on a tourist visa or as a dependent, and then wala, dropped out of the radar kasi ngayon pala changed into a different visa and is now working. So that is a legal transfer of documentation, but kulang. There is a break in the process because dapat kasi as soon as you get your visa, your employment visa, then you go and have yourself registered sa POLO. Okay, so this is the Philippine Overseas Labor Office na directly connected or twin yata or something ng OWWA. And that is what happens. That is when you do and process your contract verification. So you bring your documents, you bring your private documents, your passport, proof that you are who you are, and then yung kontrata mo, and all the other documents that they would be asking, plus the fees, and then you have yourself registered, you have yourself verified na andito ako. So you present yourself, you declare yourself to our government. Andito po ako, I'm now here in this country, I'm now working legally, and I am doing a voluntary registration. So ito yung voluntary registration of an OFW compared dun sa mandatory kasi pag mula ka Pilipinas na hired, hindi ka makakaalis unless wala kang registration sa POEA. So yun ang mandatory. Walang choice. Pero those who are here abroad, yun. Voluntary registration. Hindi yun sa pilitan, but it's voluntary because you want to and you need to have yourself protected. So hopefully that's quite clear. Hindi po tayo magpaparehistro sa OWWA kung patapos na at pauwi na tayo. Because then that defeats the purpose. And then there's another point. Hanggang kailan ang coverage ng OWWA? So I've been going through all the OWWA documents, through the even the the act governing the operations administration of OWWA. And so far I've been asking some people na hanggang kailan at ano ang coverage ng OWWA, yung period. So the thing here is that OWWA, ang maximum is for 2 years. Okay? So it's either at the end of your contract or maximum of 2 years. Now, dito tayo, if this is the case that it's only a maximum of 2 years or whichever comes first, the end of your contract or the 2 years na validity ng OWWA, dito tayo madaming nadidisgrasya. I'm not saying literal disgrasya, but figuratively, dito tayo, what's the term, Ethel? I mean, this is where we fail. Okay, so this is where we have the gray area. Kasi we always think na once we register with OWWA, 2 years continuous. Yes, according to the mandate, it says maximum 2 years coverage or upon expiration of your contract. Now, there are some contracts, if you will take note, that are for 1 year, contracts that goes beyond 2 years, And then there are some people who actually do not renew the contract every year. Like in my case, there was a time that I was working here and my contract was just continuous. So for 6 years with one employer, I didn't have to go renew. I didn't have a renewal of my contract every year. So I was in recruitment. I was not in service. So I was with a recruitment facility and our contracts were just that. It was unlimited. And then after the first contract, continuous na kami until such time that we actually ended. And in my case, that was for 6 years. So after yung pinakauna kong pagrehistro with OWWA, I actually failed myself because I assumed na 2 years and then basta nagkamali ako doon. So I would admit that. Now, this is something that others should not do and others should not take for granted. Kasi ang nangyayari is that your OWWA has expired pero hindi mo naisip kasi continuous pa ang kontrata mo. Do you get the point, Miss Atel?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm trying to validate whatever it is I'm saying because I think I might ramble sometimes, so pasensya na po. Pero if hindi po naiintindihan, then please let me know. Comment below so that we can improve for next time because this is a very, very raw stream. Hindi scripted, wala pang tulog. I know those are not excuses. And this is the very first time that I've actually gone full on YouTube. So hindi ako telegenic, so conscious ako. Pasensya na. So anyway, going back to that, you have to be aware na minsan yung contract mo is either continuing for so many years, especially for those office workers and executives. I know that there's a lot of you here, hindi lang on the other side of the spectrum na household tayo, but there are so many executives who do not have to renew their contracts every 2 years or every year. So it's so easy to forget that you also have to do your OWWA, especially if hindi kayo nag-uwi-uwi. And even then, some people would only renew the OWWA kung patapos na nga. That's what I was saying. So you still fall into the gray area. You can still fall into the crack. Because if according to the papel here on Republic Act 10801, which is actually the act governing the operations and administrations of OWWA, a date-to-date ang coverage. So what happens? I've been asking and I really would like to get an answer on this because as I was saying, hindi naman ako taga-OWWA, hindi rin ako expert sa OWWA. I'm just another person who's really concerned about this because I've seen so many. I mean, kami with the volunteers from OWWA GME, have seen so many cases wherein there's a lot of confusion regarding OWWA, regarding the coverage of OWWA, and hanggang saan at ano ba talaga ang pwedeng make out actual registered workers. Ibang topic pa yung mga unfortunate enough to have gotten into trouble na undocumented. Okay, so that. Now, it says there na date-to-date. Ang maganda is as soon as you pay, covered ka. Po, last minute, and then I need to do the OWWA or I need to do the OEC. So nagbayad. Well and good. Right there and then you are covered. Ano ka na? And hopefully that lasts for 2 years. But then what about nag-expire? If they're saying na it's date-to-date lang talaga, on this date covered ka up until this date, and then after that, wala. Then what happens to you if may mangyaring masama? I mean, di ba? I hope I'm wrong. I mean, I really hope that I'm wrong on this. And I've been asking actually mga people who are in the position if they could provide me with some information or at least some assurance regarding that. Because what if, like example, asawa ko, sorry Han, but Hubs mismo, si Hubs. Like, we were trying to get his, he has been working with the same company for like around 12 years. Okay. Now, obviously, we also fall into that thing na nagkasala din kami sa sarili namin. We failed. I'll be very honest with that, which is why I'm very, very concerned. I'm very active on this right now because so many things have happened around us, to people around us, to actually bring the concern up front. Ang dami kasi nating nakita na mga pangit na events, which could be really very, very real. Kasi wala hindi natin masasabi na that will never happen to me. That accident will never happen to me. But it can. And it is very scary. Because based sa nakikita namin ngayon, what's happening to these people, it's not something that we would want to happen to anyone or for any one of us to go through. Especially ngayon, ang problema nila with OWWA, which is actually what triggered this entire thing. Na naubusan na talaga tayo ng pasensya na, okay, we have to go and get these things done. We have to go and dig things up with OWWA. But before we can go and knock on OWWA, we need to find within ourselves first kung paano ba natin naintindihan si OWWA and what have we done ourselves to avail and to deserve and to get our OWWA benefits. Okay? So balik tayo doon na, am I rambling, Miss Ethel, or I'm still clear? Thank you. So anyway, what's happening is that, like, si husband ko, as I was saying, what if on date-to-date lang talaga ang coverage? Sobrang natagalan that we remember to go and say, hala, yung OWWA mo pala, that's patay pa sa lahat ng patay. Because yes, you have registered at some point, but then there was also a point wherein, baby, I'm sorry, baby, I'm sorry, I'm doing a live, so no kids allowed. Thank you. So, sorry, I got cut off. So, natin na, there was a time na nawala sa isip that he has to renew his OWWA. And then, I tried to do a registration for him. So, unfortunately, nataon sa pandemic, so we were all in lockdown. And then it so happened na, even though he was in the same company, nagkaroon ng konting shift. So there was a change in department, there was a change in location. So it was very convenient, nagkaroon siya ng bagong updated contract. So it was not a new contract, it was just a revised contract. So sabi ko, okay, this is a sign and this is an opportunity to renew. Kasi andito may bago kang dokumento. So I went and sent an email. Now what happened was that I sent an email like ending of a particular month, and then I got the response telling me kung ano yung mga dokumentong kailangan the next month, like that was June, May something, and then June 1st or second week. So it took a few days or a few weeks bago ako nakakuha ng response. In fairness, baka busy sila. And of course, ang daming inaatubag. But that's the thing. So ilang taon na nga hindi covered. And then when we were trying to get an appointment, umabot pa ng ilang linggo. And that was not the appointment. That was just the requirements. So I sent the requirements. In my case, 2, 3 days or 4 days na bago ko na sent. But I sent it. And then after that, wala. So I made another follow-up after a few weeks. So I'm not talking about days. I'm saying weeks. Before I was informed again that, okay, finally, this is the date that you should come, or he should come, and he can renew the contract. So imagine that. More or less, it was almost or at least a month from between getting the appointment to actually being able to renew it. That's the minimum lang. Kasi hindi ko na ano kung ano talaga, ilang days specifically talaga, but I know it was more than a month. So isipin nyo lang na, what if something, knock on wood, had happened to him in between that? So wala pala siyang OWWA coverage. Kaya sabi nga nasa ko, so if something had happened to me, if I was the one who was near that accident with that recent explosion or something, I mean, knock on wood, ano pala kayo? Na-thank you ako. Na-thank you kayo. Sabi ko, wala, nga tayo. And there's nothing we can do. Kasi ilang years talaga na nawala tayo. We fell through the gray area and we fell through the cracks because he had never had to renew his contract. He didn't have a new contract all those years. Isang continuous contract lang. So this is just an example. And what I was citing is, I mean, it doesn't happen to everybody, hopefully. And then yung ano doon na, yung number of days to get that registration and the schedule. So things happen in between. It could be a natural thing, it could be an accidental thing. But whatever it is, there is always that twist of fate that we never know. Okay, so get yourself registered. Yun. And then going back to that again. So, kumusta ang OWWA membership para doon sa mga people who are falling under the gray areas? Because we're not so concerned about those na deployed formally from the Philippines. Automatic kasi yun eh. All you need to do is just keep on renewing once you're here. But that's the thing, keep in mind kung kailan na-expire ang kontrata, when you have a new contract, renew it. Or when you have a new employer, you have to renew it. You might have a previous or you might have an existing record or profile with POEA and with OWWA, but it doesn't mean that it's continuous. So you still have to be aware and conscientious about it. Okay? So now, going back to our primary concern, yung mga people in the gray areas, yung mga, as I was saying, tourist visit, anybody and anyone who has found employment after the fact of getting into the country. You might have grown here, and then, but bottom line is Filipino ka pa rin. Or you might have grown somewhere else. You're still intending to go home. You have not changed nationalities. And then you found work outside. So even sabihin mong social ka or whatever, or super executive, super big position, the fact is you're still a migrant worker and you still need to register. Okay? So kahit sabihin mong, sobrang laki ng sahod ko, I don't need the OWWA thing. Well, you still need the OWWA. You still need, if it's not so much as the OWWA benefits, kasi sabihin mo, kukonti lang naman, pag namatay, natural death, 100,000 pesos equivalent. Aray, that's the worth. Or kung accidental death, 200,000 pesos. And then may rider pa. May burial benefits na, what was that? That was 20,000. So, yun lang. And this is in pesos. I mean, is burial really worth only 20,000 these days? And is a natural death only worth 100,000? But anyway, hindi naman ito supposedly ang what's this, the sole thing na you will be banking on. Pero, kumbaga supplemental tulong ito sa atin. So regardless of the fact whether you need those amounts, kasi masyado ka ng mayaman, masyado ka ng madaming naipon all those years, dollars ang earning mo, you're still a migrant worker. And in the eventuality that you need the government's protection, in the eventuality that something happens in the locality or in the host country where you are located, you need our home country's government's help. And you can only do so that with as much aggression, and not negative aggression, pero yun ano lang yung pwede mong ipag-iitan and insist that you need to I need help and you need to help me, and I am in this kind of trouble. Because ano ang ginagawa ng OWWA? It monitors the situation sa iba-ibang bansa through the embassy, and then they coordinate. So alam nila kung sino ang mga nandoon sa ang bansa ang in trouble or sa ang may possible na mga sakuna na nangyayari. And then so if you are registered under OWWA, then it would be easier to trace you, it would be easier to extend help to you. Now, what happens kung hindi ka rehistrado? That's the very big example that we saw and what happened during the height of the pandemic here in the UAE. Ang daming caught unawares, ang daming, what would be the term? Yung hindi ready na naabutan ng pandemya, who came on tourist visas, who came on visit visas. These are the ones who we refer to as chancers, na nalagay talaga sa alanganin. And mistakenly, everyone kept on blaming OWWA. In this case, I'm not taking sides. I'm being very factual here. So mistakenly, they blamed the government. A lot of people blamed OWWA and for not helping them quickly, for not responding immediately. But are we in the position to do that? Were they in the position to do that? Unfortunately, hindi. Kasi even if sabihin natin, gobyerno ka yan, yes, that's our government. But we went through the back door eh. We knew we were coming out as chancers. So this is not going to be very popular. This portion is not going to be very popular. Pero this is the truth, okay? Because I want to be fair also to our government and to OWWA and to the people who are there. Na dito sa part na to, we have a responsibility. Hindi kasalanan ng OWWA na hindi tayo natugunan. Yung mga nanghihingi ng ayuda, nagdedemand na ganito ganyan, na bakit hindi kami sinasagot, bakit hindi kami tinutulungan. But actually in the end, they came through eh. Tumulong. Merong pondo, merong emergency funds. Pero meron ding limit. And the thing nga is, ang first allocation, ang first command doon is to check who are the registered beneficiaries. Sino yung legal na nagparehistro? I mean, the tourists and the visit visas are not illegal, but you were not registered. The government did not know that you're here trying to find work because you came out of the country presenting yourselves as tourists, presenting yourselves as someone able to support yourself elsewhere, abroad. So ang nangyari is hindi alam ng gobyerno that we have this much excess of hundreds and thousands or even 1 million people somewhere outside of the Philippines caught unawares, caught in the middle of the pandemic, needing urgent assistance to go home. Pero hindi sila rehistrado sa gobyerno. Hindi alam ng gobyerno na may OFW palang ganun kadami doon. Because technically, hindi tayo OFW even if working tayo, pero hindi tayo nagrehistro. Hindi tayo formally OFW. We are migrant workers. We are Filipinos overseas. Pero in the essence of the word, in the formal context, hindi tayo officially registered with our government. So that's the thing. The pandemic has really depleted the resources of the government. And even if we say, yes, I am one of those who would on an automatic reaction would say, ang daming pera ng gobyerno, nasaan na ang contributions ng mga OFW, $25 or equivalent, millions tayo. But then we also have to think na billions ang lumabas na pera. And it had to be continuous aid. And somebody was saying na, ang dali-dali lang namang ilabas niyan kasi ganyan nga, ganito ganyan, pera natin yan. Pera natin, but there is a proper allocation, there is a proper auditing that also has to go through. Pero of course, there's always going to be a case-to-case basis. So ito rin yung kinakatok natin sa OWWA and the powers that be. Now, going back to that again, yung mga iba na OWWA members, have gone through years na hindi man lang sila nag-claim or hindi nag-ask from the government. Well and good, you're fortunate enough na hindi nangyayari yun. But then there are some OWWA members also na unfortunately, para bang sinasadya ng panahon na kung sino pa yung napaso, kung sino pa yung hindi narehistro o nakapag-renew, yun pa yung nagkakaproblema, yun pa yung nag-need ng assistance. So where do we go? What happens now? OWWA will try to help us, pero there are limits as I was saying. So aside from OWWA, dalawa to eh. Kung hindi ka rehistrado, if you're not a registered OFW or if pasok ka na and talagang nawala na from the years of acceptable coverage, then the agency of last resort for an overseas Filipino who is undocumented, unregistered is the ATN. This is the Assistance to Nationals. Now, obviously, they would not have that much of powers or influence also. Pero sila ang takbuhan natin. And it's become very popular na ang reklamo is, ang sama ng ugali ng ATN, ang sama ng ugali ng OWWA, hindi tayo sinasagot, hindi tayo tinutulungan. Okay, 2 points. It actually happens na may sa ATN po, buong araw din sila. This is not in defense of ATN ha, this is just being very fair. Buong araw din po sila, ang kaharap nila, puro problema, puro reklamo. And we have to admit, meron din po tayong mga kababayan na pasaway din. Nagpupunta ng ATN, nagpupunta ng OWWA for issues and concerns na minsan they got into it out of their own kapasawayan. But then there are also really a lot of issues happening na kailangan talaga ng tulong ng mga kabayan natin. And this is where the gray area comes again. So if you notice, there's a lot of gray areas. Sabihin natin, gobyerno yan eh, dapat parang science, di ba, facts lang, 1, 2, 3, yun na yun. Pero hindi eh, because we're in a different country, we're in a different locality. So even if hindi tayo membro ng gobyerno, even if we don't know what's there, common sense will sometimes tell us that there are protocols, there are some rules that they need to follow, there are some guidelines that they need to adhere to. And then tayo kasi, bugso ng damdamin natin, we just go and rush. And then sabihin natin, you need to help me, I demand help. Pilipino ako, OFW ako, may pondo ang OFW. And it's sad, but hindi po all the time nangyayari as we would want. And going to that issue, something triggered this decision to go live. And this is not going to be the first. So even if you don't like this first raw session, magkakaroon po ako ng another session to follow with a more organized topic. But ngayon lang po is, this is a anong tawag doon, Miss Ethel?
Teaser.
It's not a teaser. Kasi it's a dry run, so to speak, of things to come. Okay, so pasiuna pa lang po na ano yung mga possibilities of the topics that we really need to dig into. As I said, hindi pang-aaway, hindi pang-aasar, pero there are things that needs to be reminded sa side nila and sa side din natin. Because we try to be fair. Because I always keep on thinking and saying, what if ako naman yung nasa side ng OWWA? Would I want to be attacked or would I want to be niratrat ako ng gano'n? So ayoko din. Diba? Pero then on the side also of being an OFW, I would want also to know what my rights are, saan ang limit, ano ang limit, ano ang coverages, ano ang privileges, ano ang pwede kong makuha, hanggang saan. At most important, paano ako tratuhin. Boom. May ganun eh. Paano ako tratuhin? Boom. Bakit? Because ito yung naging issue rin eh. yung willpower, when we say willpower, yung teka, nawala. Miss Ethel, nawala. Yung, it's not so much as, am I still on? I died. Okay. Is that the one? Okay, sorry. So the guidelines are there. I'm sorry. The guidelines are there. The rules are there. The complaints are there. But then, and the solutions are there. But what's missing is sometimes yung willpower of the people who are there. Yun. Is either lacking yung willpower or nasobrahan yung willpower. So when we say lacking yung willpower, minsan it results as yung attitude. We perceive it as attitude. Kung paano makisalamuha sa atin yung nandun, yung parang galit ma'am, asal sila ma'am, wala silang pasensya sa atin. Or doon naman sa kabila is nasobrahan naman ng promise at ng public assurances, pero wala namang nangyari. So these are two things. And ito nga is it's very ironic sometimes yung willpower. Kasi minsan we are able to understand that there are limits to what they can do. What we don't understand is bakit ganun ang ugali nila. Alam yung parang we have to go and beg for our rights, beg for them to listen to us, beg na, when I say beg, is yung nakikiusap para sagutin ng maayos, parang magkaroon man lang ng konting smile na, yes ma'am, kumusta tayo ngayon? Or, ay pasensya na ha, hindi ko alam, ikaw pala yung namatayan, hindi ka kailangan ng appointment, sorry. Nakalimutan ko. Yung ganon, or yung, tutulong ka, may tinutulungan ka. Hayaan mo na yung tinutulungan mo, hindi mo naman ka mag-anak yan eh. Mapapasali ka pa sa sakit ng ulo. Iwan mo na. I mean, this kind of situations, this kind of statements ang nagpapakulo sa dugo ng tao. And that kulo na nabuhayan ng dugo, ito yung nagpapakulo, nagpapagalit. Na instead na makaintindi yung tao na oo, pagod sila, oo, madami din silang nakakaharap day in, day out. Instead na ano ba talaga? Napipilitan lang ba silang tumulong? Napipilitan, plastikan na lang ba? Ganun ang Because as I said, ayoko talaga nag-YouTube, ayoko talaga nagaganito, pero ito yung mga nangyari eh. So, I'm not mentioning anything or anyone kung saan, pero those two examples are very, very real. Yung over-promising, under-promising, and yung talagang nakaka-shock na sabihan kang, huwag ka nang tumulong, you'll get into trouble for helping that person. Hayaan mo na. To quote the person na tumulong, ma'am, ano to? Pusa? Iiwan na lang namin? Yun, we try to rescue Hinahanapan natin ng tulong ng vet. Ito pa, tao, kabayan natin. And then sabihan lang tayong, hayaan mo na. That's not your problem. So, dun tayo na aalsa. Kung sa Bisaya pa yan, there's a term, Miss Ethel, mubarog ang kaspa. I mean, may term ang Bisaya yung para pang manglipaghong ka sa kalagot, kana mo kalit og bukal ang imuhang mubukal ang imuhang dugo. Di ba? Kay gusto ka magpasensya og maayo, and then here comes the person that sino pa bang dapat takbuhan mo? Di ba doon ka tatakbo? Regardless if you're registered or unregistered na OFW, pag nagka-problema ka or meron kang perceived na problema, tatakbo ka. You're going to run to the embassy, and then from the embassy, they're supposed to course you either to POLO or to ATN or to OWWA. Doon na sila. And in most cases, ang talagang ano din, takbo ka ng embassy, pag may issue ka, sasabihin ka, pumunta ka sa OWWA kung rehistrado ka, pumunta ka sa ATN kung hindi ka rehistrado. Ito yung dalawa. So, it's very rare na mag-overlap sila. Kasi once you are identified, rehistrado, OWWA, not registered, yun ang division of labor nila. Pero yun nga, ang problema is, kung sa Bisaya pa, musaka imong dugo, lupad imong kaspa, maugtas na lang ka, kay usahay, bisan pag rehistrado ka, mahog kang katawanan. Bisan pag rehistrado ka, mahog kang makaluluoy. So kung makaluluoy kang rehistrado na ka nga OFW, unsa na lang kung dili ka rehistrado? Unsa na lang kung, sorry, pero gamit ko na po, unsa na lang kung maid ka? Unsa na lang kung kasambahay ka? Di ka kay bawa manubag. Nakulatahan na ka na abused in more ways than one. Abused because you're not giving your salary, abused because nabugbog ka, hindi ka pinapakain, mentally, physically abused. There are lots of types of abuses. So, patay na gani imuhang spirito, patay na imong kalag sa tanang problema nga imong nasugatan. Inigadto nimo, ingnon pa ka nga, sure ka? Pag sure day, or agwantaha lang, choice bitaw nimo. Unsaon naman lang di ay na. Asa naman lang di tamudagan ana. So, these are the things that are very hurtful sometimes. I'm not going to stay any longer because I know some people, I don't sound very nice, I don't look very nice online, and then I might end up rambling because of all the things that's just going round and round. Pero mao ni siya ang mga sitwasyon sa OWWA, sa ATN. Mubitaan ko anak is, wa ta mangaway. Ha? Wa ta mangaway, wa ta mangita gubot, pero mangita tag mga tubag. Kung di ta kadagan ni ato ang daganan, asa naman lang di tapadong. So kung kita willing buhat sa atong side, at least sa unta, ang kaning duha nga hensya, medyo mo tambayayong pod sila nato. I don't know if that's the right term, but I think it is. Mo tambayayong, hopefully they would also come across for us. Okay? So, I know some of you are expecting mangaway ko. I know some of you are expecting that I would be more aggressive, but that will come later. Kung asa ta, sa ang okay? Part natin with OWWA, ano ang part natin with ATN? Kung para saan sila, para ano sila. So hopefully, that wasn't too confusing or too rambling for a lot. And my shifting from English to Tagalog and Bisaya, medyo hindi nagkakabulol-bulol or using the wrong terms, but that's it. Ang inaano lang natin ngayon is hopefully may dalawang kaso tayo na we're following up na please that was publicly declared by one of the highest officials on receiving the news that this happened. So merong secretary na nagdeklara ng ganito pero using the technicality kasi alam niya there might be a technicality na makalusot doon sa promises. Then wag kayong gumawa ng promise na paasa tapos hindi naman pala makatotohanan. And if you also know that there's a possibility na hindi matutuloy dahil sa merong if, then don't raise the hope. Kasi mas. And then the other one, undocumented, distressed, medically incapacitated. And although we're grateful na yung mga aktual na dalawang tao na pumupunta, nagpa-follow up, are kind enough, aside from the fact that it's part of their work, pero I think there needs to be more action. Kasi nga, pag sinabi natin, sige, undocumented yung tao. Pero di ba pag namatay po, I mean, knock on wood, ganun din, you will have to process po yung tao, ipapadala mortal remains repatriation. So bakit po hindi natin gawin yung habang alive pa yung tao, habang buhay pa? Kasi nga, dinismiss na ng ospital, hindi na talaga ma-hold ng ospital. At ang ng ospital is pauwiin habang may panahon pa na ma-reunited with the family. Di ba mas maganda, matulungan, maiuwi. Let's just say undocumented. Alam niyo ng undocumented. Pero it has happened before. This is not the first undocumented person na napauwi or kailangan ipauwi. At mas maganda na mapauwing buhay kesa ipauwi na nakakahon. When it's the same thing, pauuwiin din. You will have to process this person eventually later on. So why not help the person now? Kung sino po begging, we're begging. Yes, we're begging for the approvals. That's for nearly 3 weeks. This is going to be the incoming 3rd week. I think, yes. But definitely more than 2 weeks na that it has been processed yung request for the medical repatriation. So sana naman po, habang buhay pa yung tao, if you could just have it in your hearts na ma-process. And I know that the processing is not here. It's already processed from here, but the approvals na sana naman it would be acted on. I mean, yes, this is an undocumented person, pero Filipino pa rin po at the end of the day. And you will still need to process her whatever consequences happen. So, mas mabuting habang buhay pa, ipauwi na. Hindi yung mortal remains repatriation. So, that's it for today. And next week po, if meron pang makikinig, hindi pa nadala sa stream natin ngayon, then it's going to be more organized and it's going to discuss the contents of the PDOS, and that's the pre-departure orientation seminar, what actually is discussed, and the post-arrival seminar, kung ano yung dinidiscuss pagdating na ng tao dito. And of course, if there's anything that you would want us to cover, then please send a message, comment below, ambisyosa, and then we will try and take it on. Okay, so salamat po. Hindi tayo nang-aaway. We're just trying to get clarifications. And if there's something that you want to know, please let us know also. Thank you.